Hello my viewers, welcome to our online tutorials. Today we are going to talk about the sort, definition of sort, type of sort, and the rule of sort. When we say sort in mathematics, sort can be defined as the square root of a number that cannot be simplified as a rational or whole number. So before we proceed, let us see what are the rational and irrational numbers. Let us remember or recall our knowledge of number. We know number are categorized into two types. We have the real numbers and we have the imaginary numbers. Under the real number, these real numbers are further divided into a rational number and irrational numbers. So rational numbers are those numbers that can be expressed as a ratio, whereas irrational numbers are those numbers that cannot be expressed as a ratio. Let us see an example of rational number, like 2. 2 is an example of rational number, and one whole number, 1 over 2, is an example of rational number. 0.5 is an example of rational number. 3 all over 1 is an example of rational number. All these numbers can be expressed as a ratio of numbers. Irrational number are those numbers that cannot be expressed as a rational numbers, as I said before, as a ratio. For instance, we have 5. 5 is an example of irrational number, but not a sort. We have the exponent or e. E is an example of rational number, but it's not a 5. Root 2. Root 2 is an example of irrational number, and it is a 5. Root 3 is another example of what? Irrational number, and it is 5. Root 4. Root 4 is what? Is rational number. I just take an example because I'm using root here. I do not use root here because when you see the square root of 4 is 2, right? And 2 is what? Is rational number. So this one does not fall into a rational number. I just take an example of it. So now, this example, like these 2, these 3, root 2 and root 3 are what? Sort. When you hit your calculator, you will see some numbers. That is, let's say, when you hit your calculator, you will see root 2 will give you 1.414. The number continue indefinitely. And for root 3, it will give you 1.74 something. The number will continue indefinitely. So those numbers that will give you a decimal, a long decimal place indefinitely are what? Irrational numbers. I hope we are following. So those are an example are what we consider as sort. So let us see the types of sort that we have. Let me clean here. The type of sort. I summarize this type of sort on my paper here. We have number 1. We have simple sort. Simple sort is a sort that has only one term. Example, root 2, root 3, root 5. The term, it has only one term. Any sort is a single term is considered as what? Simple sort. We have number 2, irrational. The sort that is completely irrational is an example of pure sort. We have an example like root 3 is completely irrational. We have number 3, Similar sort, the sort that are having the same common sort factor. Any sort that are having the same common sort factor are considered to be similar sort. Similar sort. We have number 4. Number 4 is mixed sort. A sort that can similar sort are not completely irrational and can be expressed as the product of both rational and irrational numbers. That one is considered as mixed sort. Any sort that cannot be expressed as a complete sort is considered mixed sort. So we have number 5, binomial sort. Binomial sort is any sort that contains two sorts in a term. So these are an example of a type of sort. The next thing is to see the sort. So now rule number one say whenever you have the square root of a times b is the same as square root of a times the square root of b. This is what rule number 1 says. Then rule number 2, the rule number 2 say whenever you have a square root of a raised all over b is the same as the root of a divided by the root of b. This is rule number 2. We are going to see the application of all this when we come to simplification. The next thing is the rule number 3. Rule number 3 say if you have b all over root of a, this is the same as b all over root of a multiplied by root of a all over root of a. So you do not perform anything here, you just manipulate. This one is just like 1 because any number all over 1 is the number. You just multiply this one with 1. So you are going to have b root a all over a. So whenever you have a rule in this form, you have to change it to this form. This what is rule number 3 is saying or was saying. So the rule number 4, say, excuse me, rule number 4 is say a root c plus or minus b root c is the same as you factor out one of the sort. You have a plus or minus b, you factor out one of the sort. So wherever you have a sort in this form, you are to just put those numbers outside the sort in bracket and take one of the factor. So this is rule number 4. So rule number 5 is under rationalization of sort. I hope you are following. You will see what are the rationalization is when we come to multiplication of sort. So rule number 5. Rule number 5 say whenever you have c. Rule number 5 say whenever you have c all over a plus b root n. Rule number 5 say whenever you have c all over a plus b root n is the same as to multiply it with what? Conjugate. You are to multiply the numerator and the denominator of this rule by what? A minus b root n. You have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator, that is the upper part and the lower part of the equation or the sort by this number. So the rule number 6 is also the same with this rule number 5. It's just that it comes with negative here. So rule number 6. Rule number 6 say when you have C all over A minus B root n, it's the same as to multiply the numerator and the denominator by what? A plus B root n. So the rule number 6 say if you have C all over A minus B root n, it's the same as to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by A plus B root n. So we are going to see how to apply all those rules one by one when we come to simplification. Stay with us and subscribe to our channel so that you will see all the applications of this and more of this will be coming. In the next class, we will see how to add or subtract sort. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next class. Thank you.